June rain soaked the Norman earth, and smoke crawled lazily through shattered hedgerows like a living thing searching for breath. Gefreiter Karl Hess lay prone in the mud, helmet pressed tight over his skull, as another burst of American artillery thundered across the countryside. He clutched the small, mud-stained notebook in his breast pocket, the only place he could pour truth without fear of censure or execution. They had told him the Americans were weak. Soft men from factories and city streets who fought for money, not fatherland. They said the Americans would break at the first taste of real war. But here, in the green maze of Normandy, amidst blood-slick leaves and mangled hedgerows, Hess witnessed a different truth, one carved by fire and steel. He had seen American paratroopers rise from the grass after being cut down, crawling forward over the bodies of their comrades, not with fury or fanaticism, but with cold, relentless duty. No shouts of ideology, no wild cries, just quiet, measured advance. A machine made of men. Every doctrine drilled into him in training was breaking under the weight of reality. His regiment, elite Fallschirmjäger, the pride of Germany, had been forged in Crete and tempered on the Eastern Front. They knew fanaticism. They had seen men throw themselves forward screaming for the motherland, for Führer, for survival against Soviet steel and fire. But the Americans did not burn hot like the Russians. The Americans burned slow. They advanced with calm brutality, with rifles and radio-guided artillery that punished hesitation, punished breath, punished thought. One by one, the myths dissolved with every barrage. Propaganda had painted the Allied soldier as pampered, unwilling to bleed. Yet Hess watched them drag the wounded into ditches with the same devotion German soldiers once reserved for their homeland. He watched medics sprint through death's open jaws with only a white band and courage as armor. He watched platoon leaders rise, fall, and be replaced in the same heartbeat, orders flowing as though death was simply another passing cloud. A platoon advancing through a hedgerow gap had taken 8 casualties in seconds. Hess heard their sergeant bark a command, voice steady as stone, and another line of men surged forward, stepping through gunfire with grim inevitability. Not wild, not desperate, professional, mechanized in spirit. Where ideology fueled Berlin, pragmatism fueled Washington. German bullets could pierce flesh, but they could not pierce the American system. A system of radios always working, rifles always cleaned, food always delivered, artillery always answering the whispered coordinates of forward observers lurking in every ditch. A German squad could ambush. American artillery erased the countryside in reply. A German company could anchor a crossroads. American armor rolled forward like a steel tide, welding hedgerow teeth to tank hulls. A simple idea, born in chaos, executed in days, turning ancient Norman fields into gateways of fire. Innovation born not from desperation, but from confidence. They adapted faster than German doctrine could counter. Where German officers quoted theory, American sergeants adjusted reality. And always, always they returned. Fresh faces, full belts, clean boots and dry socks, while German soldiers recycled bandages and stared across a battlefield where supply lines now belonged to the sky and the sea. The Allies owned the horizon. Yet even as the world tilted toward Allied victory, Hess could not deny the respect rising in his chest. These were not the men the Reich had promised. These were not cowards fueled by cigarettes and swing music. They were craftsmen of war, engineers of death, driven not by slogans but by the simple conviction that the man next to them must live. They fought for each other, and that made them unstoppable. In a ruined farmhouse, Hess saw an American soldier with half a hand laughing quietly as a nurse tied gauze around the bloody stump. "Only need one finger to pull a trigger," he joked. Nearby, another soldier, riddled with shrapnel, whispered not of home, but of returning to his unit. Sacrifice without spectacle, bravery without theater, resolve without ritual. It unsettled Hess more than fanaticism ever could. For fanaticism burns, but discipline endures. The diary pages filled with truth the Reich would never print. The Americans do not break. They bend, bleed, improvise, and return with fire multiplied. They advance not as men urged by destiny, but as workers fulfilling duty. And this, more than any speech or salute, is strength. He imagined for a moment what would happen when war ended, what kind of world these quiet giants would build, with their engines, their factories, their endless trains of steel. A world where industry marched alongside infantry, where precision replaced romance in warfare. A world where Germany's myth met America's machine, and myth was that he will bury you not in hatred but in inevitability. The Americans did not come to win glory. They came to finish a job. And nothing in this world, no myth, no oath, no memory, stands long against a soldier who fights not because he hates the enemy, but because he refuses to fail the friend beside him. In the hedgerows of Normandy, the truth rose like smoke into grey sky. The Reich had built warriors. America had built an army. And armies, not warriors, win wars. Snow fell in slow, silent flakes, settling like funeral ash on the dark pines of the Ardennes. Frost clung to rifles, boots, eyelashes. Breath rose in pale ghosts and disappeared into the steel-grey sky. Oberfeldwebel Marcus Reiter rubbed numb fingers together beneath his tattered gloves. His battalion, remnants of veterans pulled from the Eastern Front and boys barely old enough to shave, gathered in the cold hush before dawn, waiting for the last great gamble of the Reich. Berlin had promised this offensive would change everything. A thunderclap through the quiet American lines, a drive to Antwerp, a fracture of Allied unity. Newspapers whispered destiny. Command spoke of victory with the fervor of priests preaching resurrection. But Reiter, older than his years and carved by wounds nobody saw, felt only the weight of frost and doubt. The snow-muffled sound made the world seem peaceful. Cruel irony. Because beneath that quiet waited steel, hunger, and desperation. Across the line, the Americans smoked cigarettes, cleaned rifles, and believed the war was nearly done. They bought Christmas cards in Paris and stuffed them into packs. They joked about home, turkey dinners, warm fireplaces. Their lines were thin, their guard lowered, not from stupidity but from hope. Hope itself was a weapon. The German attack came not with shouts, but with the deep-throated roar of engines and tank treads grinding frozen earth. Panthers and king tigers rolled like iron beasts, their breath clouds rising like dragons in winter mist. Infantry followed, boots crunching snow, faces wrapped in scarves and frost-burnt cloth. Forward, came the orders. Push them back. Split them. Break them. Reiter marched with men who looked ahead but thought backward. To Stalingrad, Kursk, Normandy, Italy. War had turned into a circle, and every road now led to survival, not triumph. The first American positions fell shocked and stumbling. Young soldiers fled through snowdrifts, rifles slung without aim, helmets bouncing as they ran. Supplies burned, command posts fell, radios crackled panic. For a moment, a fleeting, fragile moment, it felt as if Berlin's gamble might pay off. Surprise tasted sweet. Momentum breathed life into numb limbs. Yet something in the Americans had changed since Normandy. Retreat did not break them, it galvanized them. Within hours, they turned from startled boys into stone-jawed fighters digging in behind wrecked vehicles and frozen hedgerows. They fought not with fury, but with stubborn, hungry defiance, the kind that takes root when victory seems near but not yet certain. Bastogne became a thorn the Reich could not pluck. Snow turned red around foxholes and farmhouses. German columns stalled not from cowardice but from fuel that never arrived, ammunition that froze in crates, engines that growled and died in the cold. Tanks designed for open plains grumbled on narrow forest roads choked with refugees and wrecks. Reiter saw paratroopers in white camouflage jackets sprint through the trees, calling to each other in low, sharp voices. American artillery, always the thunder, began to speak again, and over snow-laden treetops came the sound that killed German hope, aircraft engines. The clouds had parted, and with them the sky turned against the Reich once more. P. 47. Thunderbolts swooped like metal hawks, rockets screaming, machine guns stitching death across columns. Trucks erupted in fireballs, tanks brewed up, infantry scattered like ants under a boot. The forest shook, snow falling from branches like shrapnel. Reiter pressed against a frozen stump as a flight roared overhead. He could feel the vibration in his ribs, the hum of an industrial giant awake again, indifferent and unstoppable. So much planning, so much sacrifice, so much belief poured into this winter thrust, and it began to crumble not from lack of courage but lack of fuel, lack of time, lack of mercy from the sky. Captured American prisoners trudged past earlier, heads low but eyes steady, mumbling prayers or biting curses. Now German soldiers marched in reverse, through snow, through artillery smoke, through the corpse-still silence of a dream dying. America had built an army, and armies, not warriors, win wars. One American sergeant, wounded and shivering, had whispered through cracked lips as he was led away, "You boys don't know when to quit." Reiter had wanted to reply, "We do, but we aren't allowed." Winter pressed deeper. Hunger grew sharper than bayonets. Frostbite crept through boots, blackening flesh. Whole companies froze in foxholes, rifles in hand, still facing west. Orders demanded advance, reality demanded retreat, pride demanded neither. As the Ardennes swallowed dead and living alike, Reiter realized war was no longer a story of flags and glory. It was exhaustion wearing a uniform. It was history grinding bone into snow. It was men who once dreamed of honor, now dreaming only of warmth and sleep. And through it all, Americans kept coming, stubborn, cold, tired, but moving with that same quiet confidence he'd seen in Normandy. They didn't need speeches, they didn't need destiny, they had momentum, and a world behind them. In his final entry before the retreat, Reiter wrote, "We launched this attack believing surprise and courage could rewrite fate. But war favors not the bold, only the prepared. We march backward now, step by step, through snow that swallows footprints as fast as we make them. The enemy does not destroy us in fury, he simply outlasts us. And there is nothing louder than the silence of a war you are losing."